It's been 23 years since those planes flew into the World Trade Towers, making it the worst attack on American soil since the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor back in 1941. Well, today we're going to remember and analyze this event along with the fulfillment of many other prophecies in the headlines today, and we might do a little fact-checking for last night's presidential debate on this edition of the Endtime Show. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. I do thank you for joining me on this edition of the Endtime Show. On December 7th, 1941, the United States Naval Base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, was attacked by the Japanese Navy, and it brought about the U.S. entry into the Second World War. Often referred to as a awaking the sleeping giant, the attack on Pearl Harbor began a course of events that ultimately led to the defeat of the Axis of Power. The attack on Pearl Harbor killed 2,403 Americans, and it wounded 1,178 others. Well, nearly 60 years later, 2,977 people died in the attacks of September 11th, 2001, when the suicide bombers linked to Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 planes, and they flew 2 of them into the World Trade Center in New York and 1 into the Pentagon, and then a 4th one crashed out in Pennsylvania. And these attacks led to a worldwide war against terrorism led by the United States. And of course, you and I all know that they changed America forever, and not in a good way. So, we're going to be talking about this today. However, there's many other things that we've got to talk about. I want to note that today we recognize the first session of the Parliament of World Religions was held on September 11th, 1893. It was in that spacious hall of the Art Institute in Chicago, and that set the stage for the current Parliament of World Religions, one of the leading interfaith movements on the planet, certainly pointing us towards a world religion in the very near future. So, got a lot to talk about. We're going to remember 9/11 in just a moment. Before that, I think we need to do a little fact-checking of our own for last night's presidential debate. So, we're going to get deep off into the woods in this stuff, so get ready. First, let me mention Birch Gold. You know, these are crazy times, right? But there is peace in security. We all want security, right? Security for the country, security for our leaders, security for our families. Think about this. It is hard to be financially secure if all your eggs are in one basket. Gold and silver is certainly a way to diversify your savings, and they can be a hedge against inflation. They're a physical asset that's in high demand globally, from the wealthy to certainly the central banks, if you're following this stuff. And through my friends at Birch Gold Group, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. That's right. One thing you can do to secure your family's savings is diversify an old IRA or a 401k with no money out of pocket, by the way, into an IRA in gold and silver. So visit birchgold.com/endtime and receive a free no-obligation info kit and learn the role that precious metals play in your overall savings strategy. Again, visit birchgold.com/endtime today. All right. Want to let you know that my wife and I will be in South Bend, Indiana, doing a prophecy conference this coming weekend. We'll be at the Ironwood UPC Church of South Bend, the same place we've been for the last 20, 25 years, at 4609 South Ironwood Road, South Bend, Indiana. Saturday night, I'll be teaching this will be September 14th. It's at 7 p.m. I'll be teaching the Green Horsemen of World War III. You don't want to miss that lesson, especially in a conference setting. And then this coming Sunday, the September 15th, I think they start up there at 10 a.m. We'll be having an evangelistic service. I'll be doing some prophecy, and then we'll go off into an evangelistic service, and I'll be preaching. And if you've never been baptized, you need to be baptized, show up to the service this coming Sunday morning. And if you've never received the Holy Ghost, if you need a healing, if you need any kind of move of the Spirit in your life, a move of God, you need just prayed for anything, come to the service this morning. We're going to have an altar call on Sunday morning, and you can be touched by the Lord. We all need something, right? I mean, I try to make every altar call that I can because I need God every day of my life. He doesn't mean you're backslid because you go to the altar. You just need God every day, and I want to touch Him. And so we'll do that on Sunday morning up there in South Bend. All right. Now, really quick, I know that most of you, as well as I did, watch the Trump-Harris debate. Of course, basically, Donald Trump was debating three people, if you watched it, and he was debating Kamala Harris and the two moderators. But what I want to do is when I watch a debate like that, I pretty much know what's coming before we ever start the debate, right? And what I do is I listen to what a person says, and then, but in a debate like this, I also know their track record, and I pretty much know what I'm going to get. So I listen to what they say, but then I watch what they do, and I already know what they've done coming in. So there was a little bit of one-sided, if you watch the debate, there was a little bit of one-sided fact-checking going on. The moderators were checking Trump, and I mean, it was just it was really almost kind of what I expected going in. But we want to know the truth, right? So I wanted to kind of clear a few things up here, and Todd Starnes did a good job at this. Many people, the Breitbart, all of them have went through and done this. But I wanted to share some facts with you today concerning Kamala Harris, because we want to know the truth. They fact-checked Trump all night. Let's talk about what Kamala Harris did. Kamala falsely claimed that no one member of the United States military is in active duty in a combat zone. Really? Did y'all catch these things? On August 3rd, the National Public Radio, the NPR, they published an article. 7 U.S. troops were hurt in Iraq, in an Iraq raid targeting Islamic groups, state groups, militants that killed 15. Well, if we don't have any military in any combat zones around the world, she, as a vice president, just didn't know about that or what? Okay. We'll give her the benefit of the doubt on that one. Number 2, Kamala falsely claimed that she does not support a government takeover of health care, but she actually does. There are many things that have shown that Kamala has confirmed that she supports Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill, which would eliminate private health care in America. She's saying, hey, let's just move forward. There's debates and different things that she's participated in that said, hey, I'm for the Medicare for All bill, just like Bernie Sanders, eliminating private health care. But she said last night, I'm not for government takeover of the health care system. Really? All right, moving on. Kamala denied that she supports a fracking ban, but she does, and mandatory gun confiscation, which she absolutely does. Kamala has stated over and over that there's no question that she is in favor of banning fracking. Now, if you've ever been through a presidential election, maybe some of you young guys and young ladies that are listening, if you've ever been through a presidential campaign, presidential election cycle, what's happening right now, it's not the first time it's ever happened, but a lot of times a presidential candidate will be some way forever, decades, and then, hey, I want to get elected, so I'm going to change what I believe and make everybody think I believe one thing, and then when I get in office, I'm going to do something totally different. It's called bait and switch. Wow. A lot of that seemed like it was happening in the debate last night, right? Again, we want to know the truth. we're going to be living with one of these two people in the next 4 years. I want to know what's going on. Kamala said that that's not true when President Trump highlighted her support for defunding the police. Think about that. Defunding the police departments, which she has repeatedly called to do. But when Donald Trump said something, she said, oh, that's not true. But according to ABC News on July 20, and I'm quoting here, in the summer of 2020, shortly after the George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police officers, Harris gave a string of interviews amid nationwide protests calling for police reform, in which she at times voiced support for some of the ideas behind the defund the police movement, calling for a reimagining of a reimaging of policing around the country. In one of the interviews, a radio segment from June 10th, 2020, just over 5,000 views on YouTube, Harris told Power 106 Los Angeles host Nick Cannon that she believes we have to redirect resources from the police to other areas of government, mentioning schools and small businesses. But yet she said in the debate last night, I'm not for defunding the police. Number 5, Kamala denied that she raised money to bail violent rioters out of jail during the 2020 Summer of Love, but her tweet, the tweet that she tweeted back then, is still literally up and visible today. I went there. It says June 1, and this is the actual tweet, June 1, 2020. She said, if you're able to chip in now to the MN Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting. Listen, folks, they were rioters. But she said for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. It was absolutely opposite what she said in the debate last night. Well, okay, moving on. Number 6, Kamala Harris, during the debate, falsely claimed President Trump supports Project 2025, despite the fact that he has distanced himself from that. He didn't really have to distance himself from it. He's never been a part of it. He's never been involved in it. And so, but she kept bringing it up because there's a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of different things going around, and he's never been a part of it. He said, I don't want to be a part of it. Number 7, Kamala falsely claimed that Tim Walz did not legalize abortion on demand up until birth in Minnesota. But folks, listen, that's exactly what he did. February of 2023, Breitbart, they posted an article. Minnesota Democrat Governor Tim Walz signs an abortion up to birth bill. She said he didn't do that during the debate last night. But I'm quoting here, Minnesota citizens concerned for life, the MCCL, they blasted the law as extreme, inhumane, and harmful to women and children who deserve so much better. The Minnesota citizens, the MCCL co-executive director, Kathy Blazer, she stated this, and I'm quoting, the PRO Act, which is what Tim Walz got passed, it means a right to abort any baby for any reason at any time up till birth. It means that the elective killing of a human being in utero is perfectly legal, even in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, when the child can feel excruciating pain and could live outside the womb. It means that parents have no right to know when their teenage daughter has been taken to undergo an abortion. Kamala Harris said that never happened last night. Also, the National Catholic Register published an article. The title was, Tim Walz removed requirements to try to save babies born alive after abortion. He removed that requirement. I'm quoting a Minnesota law from the National Catholic Register, a Minnesota law that had been on the books since 1976, required responsible medical personnel to use all reasonable measures consistent with good medical practice to preserve the life and health of the born alive infant. However, the legislation that Walz, the potential vice president with Kamala Harris, The legislation Wall signed on May 2023 got rid of the word preserve and replaced the previous wording with a revised requirement to care for the infant who is born alive. And pro-lifers say that they find that change disturbing. I'm quoting again. The concern is that the law no longer requires that life-saving measures be taken. It only requires care. It took out the word preserve the life and only care for the life. Big difference, folks. So the law, as it's now written, could allow a baby to be left to die. Even a baby who could be saved with the appropriate life-saving measures. Paul Stark said this. He's the communications director for the pro-life group of Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life. He told that to the Register. Kamala Harris denied these things in the debate last night. Also, number 8, Kamala Harris claimed that President Trump supports a national abortion ban. He does not. And that he wants to ban IVF. He does not. Number 9, Kamala Harris resurrected the Charlottesville hoax, which fact checkers have repeatedly debunked. And, you know, these are just a few of the things last night. I'm not going to take time to go through all of them because I want to get to 911. But I just thought we needed to kind of balance the scales. Here's the deal. If Trump told some falsehoods, he needs to be called on them. Right? I said early on, we want to know the truth. But it seems like he was called on all of his by the moderators, just about. However, it was kind of a lopsided debate. You and I both know that. And seemed like nobody fact-checked Kamala Harris. But I want everybody to make a very, really good, educated decision coming up in the upcoming election. We're talking about abortion. We're talking about, which Kamala Harris talked very passionately about, wanting to make sure women have a right to have an abortion. And very, very pro-abortion, pro-choice. And so, as a God-fearing Christian, I'm against that, 100%. And so the Bible's pro-life. So think about this in going into an election cycle. How are you going to vote? What are things going to go to? I mean, think about this. She was saying, no, that, you know, we're going to go back to Roe v. Wade and we're going to reinstate that. And Donald Trump said, well, the people wanted it taken to the states because the government is supposed to be by the people, for the of the people, by the people, and for the people, right? That's what goes down to the states where you can vote. Roe v. Wade, nobody could vote on it. The government had control of it. And it was a law. So Donald Trump took it out of the government's hands and gave it back to the states where they could vote and set the way that the people wanted it. She's not for that. So it's something we need to watch because the election's I don't know, a little over a month and a half away, November 5. And so we certainly want to know what's going on. I mean, and think of it like this. You're going to be hit with so much over the election cycle. And during an election cycle, it's easy to get so immersed in the issues that you can't see the forest for the trees. And that's why I always take a step back on every issue, world war, world religion, whatever. I step back and I look at the entire scope of things. What's really going on that drives these little events? Because the events are just a symptom of an issue or a problem. What's that? That's what I want to know. Because then I know how they're going to make their decisions, right? And so just like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris is a globalist. You need to know that. And therefore, she supports globalism. Globalism, that is the belief that the nation state is pretty much, it's no longer needed. It isn't necessary anymore, the nation state. And that we should do away with our borders and yield up our sovereignties to a world governing body. Globalism. She believes in that. You say, well, how in the world do you know that? Well, Breitbart published an article recently that the Goldman Sachs endorses Kamala Harris's globalist migration policy. She hasn't planned on doing anything with the border, right? Joe Biden put her over that. Nothing happened. We still got millions and millions of people coming in. According to the New American, the Council on Foreign Relations, many of you know about that. Part of the, one of the leaders of the establishment here in the United States, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the entire globalist establishment has obviously thrown in its support wholeheartedly behind Kamala Harris's candidacy. Well, if they're supporting her, what do you think she believes? How do you think she'll act once she gets in office? Harris is the one who, at the Conference of Parties, the COP28 meeting summit in Dubai, she said that the U.S. would pledge another $3 billion to the Green Climate Fund. This is all about wealth redistribution, right? One of the major planks of socialism. But she pledged the United States $3 billion, that the United States would give $3 billion to the Green Climate Fund, at which is the main finance vehicle to help developed nations adapt to the climate crisis and cut out fossil fuel pollution. So she's pro, obviously, the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'll show you again here in just a moment. Kamala Harris has also been endorsed by globalist figures such as philanthropist Linda Forster Rothschild. We've talked about her much over the last couple of years. She's the founder and CEO, yes, those Rothschilds. She's the founder and CEO of the Council for Inclusive Capitalism, and she works with the World Economic Forum to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. She has endorsed Kamala Harris. And the Telenga today, they published an article, the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris meets World Bank Chief Ajay Banga. Well, I'm quoting here, folks. At their meeting, the Vice President Kamala Harris underscored the Biden-Harris administration's strong support for World Bank efforts to make investments and spur policy reforms that reduce poverty and advance achievement, here it is, of the Sustainable Development Goals, the White House informed in a statement. Okay. The Sustainable Development Goals, it's the telltale sign of a globalist. Anybody that supports that supports globalism. The Sustainable Development Goals is the United Nations socialistic blueprint to govern every single person on the earth. They're trying to realize those goals, to achieve those goals by 2030. Kamala Harris met with the head of the World Bank in an effort to say, hey, the White House is 100% on board. We will help you support and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay? So, really, again, the salient issue in the upcoming election is globalism versus nationalism. Will one party yield up our sovereignty to yield up more and more of the United States sovereignty to a world governing body, or will one party, the nationalist party, pull out of world government and retain our sovereignty here in the United States, what's left of it, I should say, and protect our borders and try to retain our sovereignty. Very, very important, folks. That's really the salient issue. Will we have a country left? You say, oh, Dave, it's not that bad. Have you followed the news lately? I mean, if you think inflation's bad now, Kamala Harris said, miraculously, we're going to reduce inflation when I get in office. They've been in office 3.5 years. It's horrific. Gas prices are at least twice what they were 4 years ago. But there's a plan moving forward to change all that, right? Okay, that's what we heard. But wow, you know, if you've had 3.5 years and it's only gotten worse, you can't blame that on the previous administration 4 years later. Okay, well, there's a lot more I could say on that. I don't want to belabor the point, but I think you get the point. I hope so, that last night's debate was as I thought it would be. I watched it from beginning to end, and wow. It's not about which candidate won or lost the debate. It's about which way they are going to take our country. Again, I really didn't pay attention to much that they said I know coming in from President Trump what you're going to get. You got 4 years of Trump, and you got 4 years of the Biden-Harris. Now, she looked at Trump and she said, well, it's not Biden you're running against, it's me. Everybody saw that as a big winning statement. But if you follow this stuff, that's a horrific statement because you know what you're going to get with her moving forward. She said, well, let's leave the past in the past and just move forward. That's horrific because, again, she's a globalist. We don't want a globalist in the White House. Okay, moving on. And again, if Trump lied and said some things he shouldn't, he needs to be fact-checked on that. There shouldn't be anybody lying. And I want to know the truth. I want to make a good, fair, balanced decision. And God help us all, right? Because our goal is to get people to heaven. But we've got to live with the decisions of some of these people. And so we got to participate, and we've got to make the best decision we can, right? I want you to be well informed in doing that. Okay. Well, man, we're coming to the bottom of the hour already. Wow, wow, wow. I didn't realize it was going to go this fast. When we get back from the break here, we're going to talk about 9/11, September 11, 2001. I know many of you probably can remember where you were. Our production guys and I were talking just prior to coming on, and I was telling them where I was at, and they were one of them was in 5th grade, and the other one was 9 years old, and so very early on for them. But I know exactly what I was doing, where I was at. I could almost take you to the exact spot when we heard the second plane went into that into the trade tower, and so we're going to talk about that when we get back from the break. I want to make sure we recognize that today because we lost many, many thousands of brothers and sisters. Our American brothers and sisters, certainly want to remember them. We don't want to forget that. Many of you were probably affected by it personally or maybe off from a distance, but it changed the way America operates today. Think about our travel and our privacy. We're going to talk about all that when we get back, as we remember September 11th, 2001. See you after the break.
A voice spoke to me and said, I've got something I want to show you. I was so sure God had talked to me. And I was stunned on what I saw.
A direct fulfillment of this over 2,500-year-old prophecy. The United States will stand with Israel.
Why haven't I ever seen this before?
1/3 of humanity will die. What do these beasts symbolize?
The lion, the bear, the leopard.
The combined beast from Revelation 13 represents the end-time government of the Antichrist. Understanding the end time.
Now streaming on Endtime Plus and available to order at endtime.com/UET. Go to endtime.com/UET or call 800-ENDTIME.
What if you could understand Bible prophecy? Dave Robbins, the host of the Endtime Show's TV and radio programs, is holding a free prophecy conference near you. Gain peace and understanding about what the Bible says concerning end-time prophecy. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com/events to see when Dave will be in a location near you.
Welcome back, everybody. And 23 years ago today, it's a long time, I came to work at Endtime with my father-in-law in Irvin Baxter in 2004. So September 11th, 2001, a friend of mine, his name was Quentin Schuler, and I were building I worked out in construction for 20 years. So I was building a humongous room addition on the back of this lady's house, me and another guy. We had been to the lumber yard. While we were at the lumber yard, this is back before Lowe's and Home Depot. We were at an old-fashioned lumber yard in Richmond, Indiana. They told us about somebody flew a plane, or, you know, we thought it was an accident at that point. Somebody flew a plane into one of the trade towers in New York. And we just thought, hey, some goofball got off course. He didn't, you know, he must have been drunk. Something happened and hit one of the trade towers. Horrific situation. We get in the truck to head back to the job site with a truck full of lumber and stuff. And on the way back, we're listening to it on the radio, and the guy comes on, and he said, breaking news, the horrific situation, a second plane just hit the second trade tower. Well, me and Quentin looked at each other. He was driving, and we both looked at each other, and we said, terrorism. I mean, just immediately, because we knew the chances of two planes hitting both trade towers the same morning, the chances of that to being a coincidence, that's ridiculous. So, pre-planned, some people say it was. I don't know if I could prove that 100%. I don't want to throw that out there. However, let's remember those people and remember what happened. September 11th, 2001. It really begins, I remember the morning, but this was in Richmond, Indiana. Obviously, I wasn't in New York. But it begins as any other morning, like a crisp, early fall day in northeast United States. But by the time the sun set over New York, Washington, Somerset County, Pennsylvania, the entire world had changed. That day changed all of our lives. Whether you understand what happened or not, it changed all of our lives forever. So at 7:59 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, scheduled from Boston Logan International Airport to Los Angeles International Airport, it takes off with 92 people on board. A few minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 departs Boston Logan with 65 people on board. That was 8:14 a.m., and it was also going to Los Angeles. By 5 minutes later, by 8:19, flight attendant Betty Ong on American 11, she notifies her base that her flight has been hijacked. A minute later at 8:20, American Airlines Flight 77 departs Virginia's Dulles International Airport with a destination of Los Angeles and 64 people on board. And then at 8:41, so was this a coordinated deal? Absolutely it was. 8:41, United Airlines Flight 93, carrying 44 people, departs Newark International Airport, bound for San Francisco International Airport after being delayed for nearly 30 minutes. Well, at 8:46, hijackers crash American 11 into the North Tower of the World Trade Centers in Lower Manhattan. I've been there and looked down in the hole when they were torn down. A horrific situation. A minute later, at 9:03, the hijackers crash United 175 into the South Tower of the World Trade Center as millions of American viewers watched online. They were, well, I should say, back then, what would it have been? It would have been live TV. We were watching, when we got back to the lady's house that we were building the giant room addition on the back of her house, we said, ma'am, can we watch your TV? She brought us in there. She was watching it, and we watched the smoke just going everywhere out of the trade towers. Many of you probably watched that. And the TV networks were carrying the aftermath of American 11's crash into the North Tower, and then it becomes clear that the events in Manhattan are no accident. Well, shortly thereafter, the FAA bans all takeoffs and diverts traffic en route to the New York City at 9:08 a.m. And the Port Authority gives the orders to shut down all the bridges and tunnels in the New York area at 9:21 a.m. Minutes later, this would have been about 9:37 a.m., hijackers crashed American 77 into the west side of the Pentagon. And at 9:59 a.m., now, folks, we're talking about less than a 2-hour span here. The South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. In the midst of the United 93 passengers, the heroic attempt to prevent their flight from being used as a weapon in the ongoing attack against the United States, the hijackers intentionally fly the plane into the ground in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. That was at 10:03. The North Tower of the World Trade Center collapses at around 10:28 a.m. and 102 minutes after being struck by American 11. So after the dust settles on just a beautiful fall day, after the dust settles, the fires are extinguished and all is counted. 2,977 innocent lives had been stolen by these Al-Qaeda terrorists. Most of today's college students, they weren't even born when this tragic event occurred. But on this day, we have to remember the events that changed America, and more importantly, lift up the families in prayer of those affected by these horrific satanic acts. I have a friend of mine that his sister worked in the trade towers. She was supposed to go to work that morning and had a meeting somewhere else and didn't go to the trade towers that morning, folks. Now imagine that. And her life was spared. She was supposed to go to work that morning, had a meeting that wasn't in the building, and her life was spared. Wow. He told me that story, and I said, man, you got to be kidding me. It has been 23 years since that attack, and there are still some lingering effects of this devastating terror attack that have not dissipated. Of course, you and I are both living through these. Increased security, to a permeating mentality. And there are some lasting effects of 911 we still feel today. Number one, airport security has gotten a lot stricter, right? Before 911, I want you to think about this. All you guys that don't remember, or you were too young, maybe you weren't even born then, but before 911, long lines at the airport and extensive security checks, they didn't exist. That's because before November 2001, the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, didn't even exist, folks. The TSA was created as a direct result of the 911 attacks. And that the tight security measures, they haven't let up for the last 23 years. Think about that. I'll travel probably 30 to 35 weekends this year. And going to the conference and coming home from the conference. I'll probably travel 70 times. And the TSA lines, every single time drive me nuts. I have been patted down more times than I can count, and just waded through long lines, and people can't read signs, and dictators in the TSA. I mean, it's horrific. None of that existed before 911. Think about this. Cabin doors on airplanes. They're also now protected to keep pilots safe, and the screening process has increased in scrutiny and size. Overall, air travel has become safer as a result of the attacks. But there are those that worry the increased security allows for potential racial profiling. Crazy. Also, the Department of Homeland Security was created. The Department of Homeland Security, that was created 11 days after the 911 terrorist attacks. And there have been security increases outside of airports. The airport isn't the only place where you can feel the increased security presence. In fact, this security increase has impacted most American businesses, schools, with added security features like automatic locking doors and keypads and all kinds of stuff like that. Back when I was a kid, that was unheard of. When I was a young kid, a lot of people would go off and leave their doors unlocked at their house. Anybody remember that? But nowadays, man, it's just security, especially with the invasion of our southern border. Think about that. And these gangs and things coming in and taking over hotels and cities and all this other stuff, and it's just horrific. Before 911, it was much easier to gain access to office buildings across the country, and at most, it would require you to, sign in at the front desk or wait to be retrieved maybe by the correct party. But now, it's not that easy, is it? Everything's on lockdown. Visitors now have to get registered at the security desk. Employees need a security key code or a badge to gain access to the building. And similarly, most government buildings and prominent institutions have barriers that prevent vehicles from crashing through. And when you go to a courthouse or something like that, you got to go through a metal detector. And I mean, it's just used to, we didn't have any of that stuff. Okay? There was also an increase in surveillance. 45 days after the 911 attacks, the Patriot Act expanded the government's authority over phone and email communications in the name of national security, of course. And this act made it easier for government to closely watch Americans. Now, they did it saying that, hey, this could prevent another 911. But it couldn't. Think about it. We've had a lot of things happen here in the United States since then. And all of this increased security, if somebody wants to do something horrific, they normally can find a way. That's why we need God's protection. It's better than any government that ever existed by far. Law enforcement and government agencies get more access to thousands of phone calls through national security letters and that's issued by FBI agents, and that allows agents to obtain personal information from others. The FBI probably knows more about you than you do. Think about it. They track your habits. They track with a digital footprint. I can tell you more normally where you're going to buy your groceries, where you're going to get gas, where you'll spend most of your money, what you spend your money on. Whenever a debit card, you're creating a digital footprint. That's all tracked, everybody. You understand? I mean, my phone listening to me, I can talk about a place I want to go eat with me and my wife. Where do you want to go eat tonight, honey? I don't know. Then my phone will bring up the restaurant that we decided on. How is all that possible? Because we're living under the results of all this stuff that was put in place back with 911. Prior to that, you didn't have any of that kind of stuff. But now, they're storing data. It's just very invasive. 911 started a lot of that, and America's never going to be the same.
They that understand what is taking place will instruct many.
Except a man is born again, he can enter or see the kingdom of God.
I don't care what label you've been given or what label you've given yourself. You are essential. You still matter.
This is a journey, and when we get to the other side of that, that's where our prize is. That's where our reward is.
End time is not going anywhere.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And, I don't want to leave, some of this stuff sounds apocalyptic, and, I don't want to leave everybody all the time just, thinking, oh, man, the sky's falling. The sky's not falling. If you've got a relationship with the Lord, you're serving God, you've got your hand in His hand, and He's leading and guiding you through this life, the sky will never fall on you. Think about that. The Bible says, for we know all things work together for good to them that love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. Now, we do have to make some decisions. We got a lot of things that we need to face in the near future that sometimes you're just going to have to make a decision. We want you to make educated decisions and things like that. We want to have great end-time revival, but we still got to live. The Bible says, occupy till I come. So we got to make some decisions. So we want you to make good, educated decisions, and the Bible says that the sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. Well, there's going to be people like that in the end time, folks. God's not going to leave us without a sense of direction, knowing what's coming and how to avoid some of these potholes. So that's one of the reasons I believe End Time Ministries exists, because we understand the prophecies of the Bible, we're walking with the Lord, we're led by His Spirit, and God is helping all of us together, right? We're all in this together. And so I want you guys to understand why we're doing what we're doing. Now, with that said, I know when we get on the radio sometimes, you get off the radio and you think, wow, you know, holy macaroni, all this stuff's going on. It's almost too much. It's almost overwhelming. No, it's not. I'm trusting God. We're at the tip of the sword on this stuff. I mean, we're out there. We've been censored. We go through all kinds of stuff, okay? But the fact of the matter is, I live a wonderful life. And God is helping us. He's got our hands upon us. He's blessing us. And when I say blessing us, none of us are rich. And I'm not talking financially. I'm talking about I live a blessed life. My wife and I are in church. We're serving God. I'm going to heaven. My son and daughter are in church and going to heaven. My son-in-law, fabulous guy. I couldn't have drawn up and created a mold of a better son-in-law than the one I have. If you've ever met him, you know what I'm talking about. He's in church and leading my daughter in a relationship with Jesus Christ, and they're going to heaven. And my 3 granddaughters are 3 angels. So, do I lead a blessed life? You better believe I do. Does my car tires go flat? Does my hot water heater go out and all this other kind of stuff? Yeah, that's life. But man, am I blessed. Wow. I'm married to the most beautiful woman on this planet. Now, you might think that about your wife, but you're wrong. I'm married to the most beautiful woman inside and out. So I lead a blessed life. And I'm not the best looking guy. Doesn't matter. I got a beautiful wife. So I'm proud to walk out and about town and show her off. You know what I'm saying? Well, this is life, right? Okay. Let me leave you on a good note. You understand the central bank digital currencies that we've been talking about for a long time. The Federal Reserve, you know, they've got the ability to control our economy here in the United States, and just a diabolical. They're part of the establishment. They're part of the central banks, the global establishment, the central bank, the Federal Reserve here. They're wanting to put out a central bank digital currency. We don't want that here in the United States of America. It's one of the #1 things I can see pointing us towards the mark of the beast. They would have absolute control over your finances. They want to program these central bank digital currencies. They want to be able to put a time stamp on them that says, hey, you can only have these for, I don't know this for sure, the length of the time, but maybe 90 days or 120 days or maybe 6 months. They're going to try to keep you from being able to save these things up. They want absolute control over what you spend your money on so they can economically sanction you. Well, you don't bow down to our edicts of the government, then you can't have access to your central bank digital currencies. You say, oh, that's not possible. Talk to the truckers and tell that to the truckers in Canada that were protesting the vaccines. The Canadian government, Trudeau, they seized the accounts of business and personal of those people up there. They economically sanctioned them to bring them under control, right? Don't tell me it's not possible. Central bank digital currencies would give them more control. So we don't want it here in the United States. Joe Biden has already put out his executive order saying, hey, we need to look into this. So many people have been taken advantage of because of Bitcoin. We need to look into the government issuing a digital currency, a central bank digital currency, which is worse. Well, once you understand how diabolical that could be, how apocalyptic that could be, how prophetic that could be, Doesn't mean it's going to be implemented here in the United States. Here's some good news. And if you have any influence in your state, or if this ever comes up on a ballot where you can vote about it, you should vote for this. The news source Tech Report, they published an article. Listen at the title closely. North Carolina, the North Carolina Senate has just passed an anti-CBDC bill, and it was voiding their governor's veto. Their governor is a Democrat, and he was pushing central bank digital currencies and different things in North Carolina. He was pushing for the ability to have that. And the North Carolina Senate has passed a bill that bans the state from participating in a Federal Reserve central bank digital currency pilot. Back on Monday, September, this would have been the 9th, a couple days ago, the State General Assembly, North Carolina, approved House Bill 690 via a 27-17 vote. The Senate vote exceeded the 60% majority that was required to nullify Governor Roy Cooper's veto and pass the bill into law. So, North Carolina lawmakers, they passed this bill to ban the CBDC from the state. House Bill 690, it prohibits North Carolina from participating in any central bank digital currency pilot. And get this, man, if every state could do this, this would be awesome. The bill also forbids the state from accepting central bank digital currencies as a medium of payment. Now, if you're in any state besides North Carolina, unless I don't know if Florida and maybe South Dakota have done this already. I think there may have been some other states. But if you're in a state where you can get this to happen, where you would pass a law that would forbid the state from accepting central bank digital currencies as a medium of payment, you should be driving for that. Because we do not want central bank digital currencies. Cash is freedom. I can give you a $100 bill, and you can go take your family out to dinner. You can go put gas in your car. You can do whatever you want. It's freedom. And me, let's say I'm the government, I don't have any way of controlling what you did with that money. You're not even creating a digital footprint. You can do whatever you want. But once it goes to a central bank digital currency that comes from the government, then I can say, oh, you want to donate to X organization? Well, that organization doesn't comply with the edicts of the government, so we're going to make it so your central bank digital currency, you can't donate to that organization. You can't donate to your church. You can't donate to a Boys Club of America or whatever. It can be economic sanctioning. Right now, they economically sanction nations to get them to conform to the edicts of the world governing body. But the Antichrist and the false prophet are going to bring that down to an individual level globally. They are pushing. I had a huge article to go through here today. I'm not going to have time to go through about national IDs and making people their access to schooling and travel and government subsidies, and I mean anything in their life will be tied to their digital ID. You don't have a digital ID? In Uganda, no national ID card, there's no education for your children. Think about that. If you don't take a national ID card, you're not allowed to have a job in Uganda. No job. No education for your children. You're not allowed to travel. No government subsidies. You basically can't function in society in Uganda without a national ID card. That's most of the nations on earth right now, you understand. A compulsory national ID card. It's not an option. Well, now you've got, but that can't control a person's bank account. But a central bank digital currency could. It would give the government control of your bank account. And you can go to any store, couldn't use dollar bills. You say, well, I've got a truckload of dollar bills in my garage or whatever. They're not going to be worth anything if they push these central bank digital currencies the way they want to. It may not start off. I've seen articles where people said, oh, we're going to start off with central bank digital currencies and we're still going to have cash. But I promise you, there's going to come a time when they're going to want to do away with cash and have a central bank digital currency. Well, everybody that's from North Carolina, you should be congratulated. Kudos. Because you guys got together and passed a law that forbids the state from accepting central bank digital currencies and as a medium of payment. Because I'm telling you, I follow this stuff all the time, and that's one of the number one things I see with the global ID and the central bank digital currencies pushing us towards the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is not here yet. But when we get to the time when the Antichrist usurps authority of a world governing body, the false prophet is revealed, they're going to use, the Bible says they will use a global economic sanctioning system. They're going to give everybody a unique identification number in their right hand and their forehead. The Bible says without which they're not going to be able to buy or sell. That was never even possible back in the time of John. But John was given a vision in the future that that's how it would be 3.5 years prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now here we are, they're trying to push central bank digital currencies all around the world. Well over 90% of the central banks are trying to issue these things, folks. And we've got little old North Carolina right here in the good old US of A that says, nah, we're going to pass a law. Oh, the governor don't like it? Too bad. We're going to pass the 2/3, go above the 2/3 votes needed, and we're going to supersede the governor's veto, and we're not going to have this in our state. That's awesome. I hope we do that here in Texas. I hope wherever you're at that your state does it, because we absolutely do not want that here. I don't want to comply with the edicts of the world government in any way, shape, or form. So, I wanted to leave you on a good note. North Carolina, awesome. Thank you guys for standing against this mess, because we know what's coming, right? The Bible prophecies help us to know what's coming so we can navigate the potholes. And I'm very thankful that God gave us the Bible, that He gave our roadmap to heaven. He gave us prophecy to help us in the end time so we can know for ourselves and then to instruct others. Man, I love Bible prophecy for a million reasons, but certainly to help us get through these end times, right? We're all in this together, and we're going to make it through as one big family. And I love that about End Time Ministries. We've got this giant family that we're all walking through this together. We're bantering back and forth, but at the center of it all is Jesus Christ, and He's helping us through these end times.